Good morning, Monday morning, ladies. It's Carol Lourie, and I am so excited to be here this wonderful, gorgeous Monday morning where I am to share the screen and the information of my dear friend and colleague, Mira Dessy, known as the Ingredient Guru. This is every time she's here all the time because her information is so important to everyone to understand what do you have in your pantry that's lurking there that is super unhealthy and what can you switch it out with. So welcome, Mira. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me on. I'm delighted to share with you and your community.
So let's just talk a little bit about what is the Ingredient Guru and why is it important?
Sure. So, as the ingredient guru, I really make it my mission to essentially do the research so you don't have to stay on top of all the stupid stuff that they do to our food and then bring that back and educate people. Because I feel like, unfortunately, food producers want us to shop on autopilot, just buy their product, pay no attention to what's in that package.
What's on the label? Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And so I really want people to be able to make informed decisions about what they're putting into their body. And sadly, there is a lot of science behind some of the health challenges that go along with many of these ingredients. But of course, that's always difficult to find, or you have to put in the time or the effort or whatever. And so that's what the Ingredient Guru does. I share all of this information through my newsletter, my book, events like this where I can come into communities and give them really detailed information.
So where does somebody get started? Like you open up your pantry, you're overwhelmed and you go, okay, you close it and you turn around. I mean, how do you get started? That happens a lot. I've heard that.
I know. And so, I think one of the most important things to do is to develop the habit of reading the label. And we're going to talk about that today. We're going to break down the different parts of the label so that people can really understand that. I think once you build that habit, you start to realize that there are things in there that you probably don't want. And then you can go through your pantry and go, this has X in it that we don't want. So we're going to look for a replacement for that. I do not encourage people to buy a copy of my book, highlight everything, go to the grocery store, spend 7 hours there, come home exhausted, and then think, oh, now I got to do it again. It's about making small changes one at a time.
Love
and
that.
learning how to make habit changes as well. Because like I said, we shop on autopilot. Man, think about how frustrated we get when the grocery store does a reset, which they usually do about twice a year. And we're like, where is the whatever now? And so we really want to make sure that we're making mindful choices while we're there.
Well, that's beautiful because I know when I go shopping at the Monterey Market, which is where I go to buy all my organic produce, I am on autopilot because I know that the organic tomatoes and the cucumbers are outside, and then I go in and there's the organic orange juice, and on the left is the whatever, and there's a whole organic aisle. So I am on for my vegetables, or at the farmer's market. I know where everyone is that I like to shop from with their produce. But what are we talking about at the grocery store? Are we talking about stuff in boxes and cans?
That is such a great question. So yes, and part of it is anything that is packaged. We definitely want to make sure we're reading the label. Things that are not packaged, we have to understand the quality of those things, whether it's buying organic produce because it's part of the dirty dozen and has a lot of pesticides on it, whether it's buying organic dairy because there's a lot, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more in depth in just a moment in the presentation, but there's added hormones and antibiotics and other things in there. So understanding those things. But then the other thing to watch out for, grocery stores have learned that a lot of people think, oh, I'm just going to shop the perimeter. I'm going to avoid everything in the middle.
Oh.
And so now they've started doing something called product creep. And
product creep, CREEP?
Yes.
Yank. What is product creep? I've
So
never.
product creep is where, for example, right now where I live, strawberries are in season. So you walk in, and
No, if they're
there's
not organic, it's like it's just a vehicle for putting toxins and chemicals in your body. Explain that.
absolutely, absolutely. So you definitely want organic strawberries, but even if they're organic, like that wonderful strawberry fragrance greets you as you walk into that section, and then right next to it is a little refrigerated case. And it has those little squishy, spongy things that are supposed to be cake and a couple of cans of whipped cream because they're
Oh,
trying to convince you that like this would be a great time to consider making a strawberry shortcake.
that's
So they're
not
putting,
strawberry shortcake, everyone. That's just chemical moment 101. I mean, I make
yes,
gluten-free, very low sugar, real sponge cake with real organic, unpasteurized heavy cream, and that is strawberry shortcake. This other stuff,
absolutely,
that's
absolutely. But they're putting it there because they're trying to convince you that those things go together. They put salad dressings next to the greens. They put barbecue rubs and seasonings and sauces over in the meat department. So they're taking things out of the center and migrating them to where products are to try to convince you to buy those other things while you're there in that section of the
there
grocery
are
store.
people whose job it is to like they get PhDs in the socioeconomic psychological research on how people shop. I mean,
Mhm.
this is a big industry placing stuff like you just said together. The meat section has the rubs, the strawberries have the fake whipped cream. It's not even whipped cream, the fake spray cream with the
Yeah,
chemical.
absolutely. And they do it also through imaging. Like look at some of the images in the produce section next time. There's like little barns up there and, farm fields. And then think about the music. They play music that is at a certain pace because they've realized that we tend to move. You're not going to find any hard rock music there because you go through the grocery store faster. They want slow music. So you'll meander in the aisles, maybe bounce a little in one aisle if a favorite song comes on. But the more time you spend in the grocery store, the more dollars you spend. So they want to slow down
It's
how fast you get
horrible.
through the aisles. It's
Really
crazy.
horrible. Yeah, it is crazy. So, yeah, that's science that I don't support. So you want to share your slides?
Yeah,
Let's talk about science that we
absolutely.
do
So
support.
let's
I just love.
share. So let's see. So if I share slides, there we go. Let's see. Is it coming up?
Not yet.
Okay, hang on. Let me
I
try
see
this
it
again.
though. I see it on the left.
There's
Oh, add
my
to stream. There we
Oh,
go.
there it is. Okay, here we go. Great.
Yes.
So, nutrition label 101, or what are you really eating? Because when we look at the label, we begin to realize it's not as straightforward as we think it is.
Perfect.
So, before we get started, I just want to share this is my disclaimer. These are companies that I am affiliated with in some way. None of them have anything to do with this presentation, but just so you know, me being transparent.
That's a wonderful thing to be associated with all these great organizations. Good for you.
Yes, I'm very touched and honored to be part of that. So let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. That is a quote from Hippocrates from so long ago. And it's,
400 BC. Do you
I
know why
know,
I know that? Because I use that in my presentation. If something has been around for thousands and thousands of years, there has to be some validity to it. So there we go. 400 BC.
absolutely. And this still applies today. We need to remember that food has a major impact on our body, regardless of whatever anybody else tells you in a medical profession, a food marketer, anything like that. Food can be and is in many ways medicine. The other food quote that I love is tell me what you eat and I will tell you what you are. Jean-Antoine Brillat-Savarin was a very famous French chef. My response to this is please don't be fast, cheap, or easy when it comes to your
Well,
food.
that goes for life too, right?
Yeah, there you go.
You don't want to be fast, cheap, or easy in any aspect of our life.
Exactly, exactly. And so, a couple of questions for people. Most people believe that a calorie is a calorie is a calorie. It's truly not. And I
Correct.
know Carol has talked with you so much about that. There is a huge difference between an apple and 10 peanut M&Ms, both of which have 100 calories, one of which is going to nourish you way more. So we need to pay attention to what's nourishing our body, not base everything on calories, which unfortunately is a myth that we have been sold by the food producers. And many people don't have a clear understanding. We don't really learn a lot about nutrition anywhere in our educational process. We also don't take the time to read labels. I believe everybody should read the label. And, even fewer people take the time to actually sit and mindfully look at the relationship between how they feel and when they're eating certain things, whether it's something that's nourishing and wonderful or whether it's something that's maybe not as nourishing. It doesn't mean that there's no room for treats. It just means to be aware of how food is affecting you and your body. So as I mentioned, there are too many people counting calories, not enough people counting ingredients. That's the more important number to pay attention to. And it's not just what we eat, it's what's in what we eat. These are many labels from all across the internet. It's just crazy how many ingredients can be found in so many of the foods. And we tend to forget because we look at that box or that can or that package
Or
and we think
you just grab the label. You're used to the label. You grew up with the label. That's what you grab, right?
Exactly. And we forget that it's not just one thing. It's not cream of mushroom soup. It's got some mushrooms, maybe some dairy, and a whole bunch of other things in there. So we have to remember
that. It's really delicious.
Yes, absolutely. So this is a picture used with permission of Mike Adams about if food products were honestly labeled. Unfortunately, they tend to use something called front of package labeling, which we will address a little bit more in just a little bit down the road.
Colon cancer, hot dogs, for sure, diabetes drink.
Yes, I know. ADHD flakes. Yeah. I mean, we are not really paying attention to what these things do for us. Yeah. So we need to remember. So I really want to take a moment and break down the nutrition panel and then the ingredient panel, because the nutrition label on a package is actually comprised of two parts. The top part is the nutrition facts and the bottom part is the ingredient panel. And we need to make sure that we're looking at both, but I, have a case for why I think the ingredients are in some ways more important. So we will get there. So the first thing to keep in mind is serving size is determined by the manufacturer. And, that it can be really challenging. I have seen things where, for example, a package of cookies, the serving size is 2 cookies. Most people don't pay attention to the number or the amount, but they count a portion as the caloric value. So a serving size is what the manufacturer says it should be. The portion is what you actually serve yourself. So if you eat 5 cookies and you think it's only worth 230 calories, there's a problem.
Okay.
The other thing to keep in mind is all of the nutrition facts, all of the percentages that we have on the right-hand side here are based on a 2,000 calorie a day diet. And most of us do not need 2,000 calories a day.
Well, if you're, if you do a lot of physical labor, or if you're a big guy and you're
right, or if
you're, shoveling dirt and all of that. But for most of our semi-sedentary lives, where exercise or positive movement is something we have to schedule into our day, if I ate 2,000 calories a day, I'd be in serious trouble.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I try to keep it between 1,000 and 1,100. And even then I need to, So you got to be, it depends where you are in your movement. Yeah,
absolutely.
So how can a woman find out how many calories, if she wants to be healthy, she should be on a day? Do you know?
Oh, yeah. So one of the things that you want to do is look up something called your basal metabolic rate, BMR. And basal metabolic rate is a factor of, and there are calculators out there that will do it for you, but it takes into account your age, your height, your weight, your activity levels, and runs them through this little calculator that tells you approximately what your resting caloric rate is for the level of activity that you've picked. So one of the things that I encourage my clients when I work with them, many people are either sedentary or light activity people. Our modern life does not encourage us to be very active. And so if you all of a sudden decide that you want to become a runner, or you want to start going to a regular class 3 times a week at the gym, you need to look at what your increased activity level is and see if that is going to change anything for you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, it's definitely important to keep in mind that once you figure out what your BMR is, it doesn't stay the same. It does change.
Okay, great.
So the next thing that we have is anything that is bold on the label is mandatory. You have to have this on the label. Food producers are required to keep these. Everything that's not, for example, we look at things like vitamin D, calcium, iron, potassium. Those are not required on the label. They put them there because they think that consumers are interested in them, but
I
it's
don't
not.
think anybody reads that stuff. I mean, maybe they look at the calories and that's sort of it.
Right. And some people
Sugar is
may,
12 grams
if they're trying to, perhaps they have suboptimal oxygen delivery and they've been told they have anemia, they need more iron, they might pay attention to it. Unfortunately, this is not the best way to get your iron.
No. I mean, look at this. This has 12 grams of sugar and it includes 10
We're going to get there. We're going to get there. Trust me.
That, I don't know what product this is. It'll be interesting. Maybe it's cookies. But
yeah.
Go ahead.
So, whoops, sorry. One of the things that I have a problem with is there is no daily need for sugar. We do not require sugar on a regular basis. So notice it is not in bold. However, because it's on the label, they are required to tell you what the daily percentage is, and they're telling you that it's 20%. You could seriously eat way more sugar than you need or even want if you start using this to balance your sugar intake. Now, one of the other things that happens, there is something called funny math that happens on labels. And funny math usually occurs with either fat or sugar, where it says, here we're using fat as an example, trans fat equals 0. So this particular product says that total fat is 14 grams, saturated fat is 2.5 grams, and there's no trans fats. And part of the reason we pay attention to that funny math, the 0 trans fat, the 0 sugar, is because it can have an impact on your body. They're allowed to say 0 if it equals less than 0.5 grams per serving.
Wow.
And so the only way to know if it's in there is to look at the ingredient panel. So this particular potato chip, for example, has olestra, which is a fake fat.
Oh, that's so bad for you.
I know.
So bad for you.
Olestra supposedly blocks fat so that the body cannot absorb it. Unfortunately, when it does that, it also blocks absorption because the body needs fat in order to process vitamins A, D, E, and K. Mm-hmm. Those are fat-soluble vitamins. They need fat. And so you can become nutritionally deficient if you're eating a low-fat or zero-fat diet. So please don't do that. And then the other thing that's really bad about it is olestra, among other things, was responsible for something that they called anal leakage or leaky butt, because it caused diarrhea because it wasn't good for you. Still not good for you. Unfortunately, still appears in the food.
Unbelievable. Better to eat the real product, organic. I mean, this company you shouldn't be giving your money to. It's just not healthy.
Yeah. And so one of the things that happens is trans fats are usually listed as either hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated. Mono and diglycerides can also be a form of trans fat, and olestra is a form of trans fat. It tends, if you look at this list, and it's not only in potato chips, by the way, I just picked that because it was a nice graphic. But anything that's light or fat-free, those tend to be the things where you're going to find a lot of the trans fats, and you really, really want to avoid them. Trans fats are actually no longer generally recognized as safe. We'll get to that in just a moment.
Great.
So this is the legal definition of what it takes for something to be considered generally recognized as safe in the food. The way it works is the food producers hire some experts. They come up with a rationale for why this ingredient should be allowed in their products. They go to the FDA and they say, okay, we've hired experts, and they've said that it's okay. And
LOL. Wait, I just have to say LOL. The key phrase here is the food people have hired the quote unquote experts. So what do you think the experts are going to find? That
yes,
the company
yes,
is paying their money they're now going to say, well, your product is not healthy or it's not safe. LOL. This is a joke.
I know. It's terrible because there are studies that show there is definitely a bias when you're being hired by a company to test their product.
Yep.
So the last one that I looked up was 2020. There were 53 notifications. So I would like to point out, first of all, this was 53 new products on top of everything else that we already have in the food supply. 49 of them, the FDA had no questions. That's how that process works. The food producers hire the company says yes, the food company goes to the FDA says, oh, okay. And that's how we got trans fats in our food. Then down the road, it turned out trans fats were not good for us. And so now trans fats have been removed from the generally recognized as safe list.
But it's
However,
it's still in the food.
Yes, they are not banned in the food. That's why we need to pay attention. Now, 4 of them at notifier's request, the FDA ceased to evaluate the notice. And that means that the food producer realized it wasn't ready for prime time. And so they just removed it. I have never seen an FDA refusal, by the way, in all the years that I've been looking at this. Normally, it's just that the notifier pulls it before the FDA can say no. And then some of them, sometimes depending on how it's formulated, may require a color additive listing, even if it's not meant to be used as a color additive. So there were also 48 pending notifications on top of the 49 that were approved. So some of the additives that are found in our food have been shown to have very significant health impact. And we're going to go through some of these. I know this group is very smart. You appreciate the science. You like to dive into understanding the why. And so for some of these, I'm going to show you the actual studies. For this, I just wanted to give you a general overview. And truthfully, with artificial flavor, it's not just artificial flavors. Artificial anything does not belong in your food. Artificial colors, artificial flavors. And then artificial sweeteners, definitely not something you want. If it's not real, please don't eat it.
That's a great sentence. If it's not real, don't eat it.
And then we also have colors. So that falls under artificial colors or anything that we don't want. And then the other thing that we also have in that trifecta is sucralose, which is an artificial sweetener. Any of the artificial sweeteners are bad for you. And the more studies they do, the more negative things that they find about artificial sweeteners. We have been sold this myth that we can eat 0-calorie sweeteners, still enjoy the sweet, and it won't impact our body. And that is totally untrue.
Really totally untrue.
Yes. And then, one other one, just to share this as an example, barley malt extract. So barley malt extract is a potentially analog for monosodium glutamate, which is really bad for you. It's also
I'm allergic to it. If I eat something with it, I get like, oh my God, I can just like almost like I don't have it, but it feels like a hive reaction, but it's almost.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Well, and the other thing is that it's also a sweetener. So it's used, a lot of companies will use multiple forms of sweeteners so that sugar isn't the number one ingredient on the label. They scatter it throughout the label so that it's hidden. And you don't tend to pay as much attention if you're not reading the ingredient panel.
Mm-hmm.
So what I want to do is I want to dissect an ingredient panel, and I picked one particular product that I know tends to be fairly ubiquitous in American homes. especially if there are kids in the home. So we're going to go
Oh,
through
I
this.
know what this is.
We're going to go through this and we're going to break
This
down.
is not anything you want to be giving your children, nor is it anything that you want to eat yourself. Where's the yellow dye? That makes
Exactly.
it that color, right?
Yes. So what we're going to do is we're going to break it down step by step. So the first thing that we're looking at is potentially genetically modified ingredients. So
Not
soybean,
potentially 100% genetically modified, right? Is that
yeah, no, and yeah. So, and part of the reason we want to avoid genetically modified ingredients, corn, canola, and soy tend to be the most genetically modified crops in the US. And part of what they do with those plants is they modify them so that they can spray them with Roundup.
oh
The
my
active
God.
ingredient in Roundup is something called glyphosate. Glyphosate is a chelating agent, so it binds with things in the soil, calcium and some of the other nutrients. And if it binds them, then the plant can't get them. And that means you're not getting them when you eat that plant. So it's creating a nutritionally deficient product. The other big challenge with glyphosate is it has antibiotic properties. It can modify your gut bacteria. It can impact your microbiome, which is really not a good choice at all. And there are also an increasing number of studies now that show that some people who have stomach issues, they have stomach pain, they get pain after eating, perhaps they have digestive upset regularly. It's that they're getting so much glyphosate, they're actually sensitive to the glyphosate now.
Well, it's also ruining the health of their gut, so they can't break down their food.
Exactly, exactly. And so we really want to make sure that we are avoiding anything that's genetically modified. And the reason I mentioned sugar here is because sugar beets are,
Yeah.
there's a growing number of those that are genetically modified. And vinegar is because vinegar is typically made from corn unless it says something like rice wine vinegar, apple cider vinegar. So we really want to watch out for white vinegar as being another potential source for genetic modification. Added hormones are huge. We talked about that briefly with the dairy and, when we were talking about going around the grocery store. So part of the challenge is there is a hormone called RBGH or RBST, recombinant bovine growth hormone, or recombinant bovine somatropin. And
Wait,
these hormones,
RBGT or what are the
RBGH
RBGH? Okay.
or RBST.
Okay.
And those are hormones that are given to the cows to make the cows give more milk. And so not good for the poor cow. They're not biologically designed to give that much milk. So they frequently get damage to their udders. They can get infections. It's bad for their health. It's really not good for them.
Poor
That
cows.
I know, not kind. That hormone does not go away when they milk the cow, which means you are drinking it. And one of the biggest challenges is that insulin like growth factor 1 is substantially elevated in the milk of cows with whom they use RBGH.
Okay, hold on. We have to have a science conversation here. First of all,
Yes.
insulin growth factor 1 is a blood work that I always want to know about, because if that number is high, that means the woman's sugar intake is elevated. Even if she thinks that she's not eating a lot of quote unquote white sugar, it's there hidden. And you don't want to have a lot of sugar in your body if you're dealing with breast cancer, because sugar is gas for the cancer gas tank, and we want that gas tank to be as empty as possible. So two things. One, I don't think adults need to be drinking cow milk. And number two, the only dairy you want to be eating is 100% organic, and it could be, unsalted butter or occasional whole milk yogurt, or sheep and goat feta, but not cow's milk, even if it's organic hard cheese, just because of what we're talking about here.
And the other thing is, this particular study did show there is a correlation between IGF-1 from RBGH enhanced milk, and a risk factor for breast and gastrointestinal cancer. We don't want that. We don't want to do anything that's going to up our cancer risk. So we definitely want to watch out for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, one of the other things that's really creepy, and so I put it in here just so that you could see it, is they discovered that when they give recombinant bovine somatropin to fish, it makes the fish get fat faster. So now they're not just giving it to cows, they're trying it out on fish as well.
So is this fish, not wild, right? It's obviously.
Yes, this is farm fish.
Yeah.
And this is trout, which is a warm water fish, not a cold water fish. So when you're eating fish, you always want to make sure that you are choosing cold water fatty fish that is wild caught and sustainably fished.
100%.
Yeah. And then one of the other things that I did want to come back to is that, the bovine growth hormone can be responsible for turning normal breast tissue cells into tumorous ones because of that IGF. It also increases mastitis in the cows, and so milk from infected cows may contain pus and blood.
Oh, this is poor cows.
I know, it's really unkind to those poor cows. And part of the challenge is when they over milk the cows like that, what many people don't realize is in order for a cow to give milk, she has to be what's called freshened. So she has to be inseminated and she has to give birth. And then they take the baby away and put it on cow milk replacer formula instead of giving it its mother's milk so that they can milk the cow. And when they do that, they're giving her all of these hormones and they're potentially shortening her reproductive life. And once she can't be bred, she's no longer any use to them. And she goes off, somewhere else, usually a burger shop.
Yeah, I was going to say, usually to the meat department.
Yes.
So that whole system is an ecological nightmare.
It is.
It is. And that's why we want to eat farm to table. We want to support local farm to table organic farmers and dairy and meat people, because that makes unhealthy baby cows who are then going to be turned into unhealthy milking cows. And the whole system is just really a mess.
I know. And then someone out probably saying, but what about the boy cows? Because you can't determine what it's going to be until it's born. So the boy cows are essentially the waste product of the dairy industry, and they become veal.
Ugh, which I can't eat. It makes me sick.
So, just to be aware of the fact that, and here's the thing, there are farmers out there who are raising, raw milk, pastured animals that are well cared for. If you can connect with them in your local area, that can be a great way if you want to have a little milk because you're going to make something with it or you're going to use it for something. But a lot of the conventional stuff is not great.
A lot of health food stores have unpasteurized dairy, organic, and everything. And so they don't have it. You can talk to your local health food store. It doesn't have to be a Whole Foods conglomerate, but a lot of little neighborhoods have health food stores, and there are also farmers markets.
And it does depend on what state you live in. Some states will not allow the sale of raw milk dairy. They will allow the sale of raw milk cheeses because they are processed. They will not allow raw milk as a product by itself. And so for people who live in those areas, frequently what happens is you wind up having to buy a share in a dairy farm. The farmer sells you a share, sort of like a CSA, and you're going to get so much milk per, season from them. Cool. Yeah. Okay. So next, we also have antibiotics, and there are unfortunately a lot of antibiotics used in the animal industry. As a matter of fact, 70% of all antibiotics used in this country are used for animal husbandry, not for people. And when we have I know. And they use it because it keeps the animals healthy being a relative term, in a confined feedlot style operation, or because, with the cows, for example, they're just breeding them over and over again. They want to make sure they stay as healthy as possible, so they keep giving them antibiotics. Antibiotics also make the cows get fat faster. So if it's a meat cow, then they come to weight to market sooner, which is more profitable for the farmer.
Right.
The unfortunate part of that is that when we have antibiotics in our food, it can lead to antibiotic resistant disease, because we are getting low level exposure to antibiotics all the time if we're eating meat that has been raised that way, or drinking dairy that has been given that kind of a cyst. So hormones are another thing. In addition to the RBGH and the RBST, we do also have estradiol, progesterone, testosterone, zeranol, trenbolone, and melangesterol, none of which belong in your body. Unless, there's a very good reason why somebody's treating you with that, but you would do that under the care and support of a qualified practitioner rather than a farmer.
Yeah, this is not, when you eat a piece of meat or I don't think we should be drinking cow's milk, but whatever. You're not also saying, yeah, sure, throw in a little bit of hormones and antibiotics while you're at it, because
As a side, yeah.
Like, absolutely not.
Yes. And so one thing that I do share with people is I understand that depending on where you live and what your situation is, organic everything can be very expensive. And so one way to make sure that you are at least not getting hormone in your dairy product is to look for this label that says that it's from cows that are not treated with RBST. Some of these other hormones tend to be used more in meat production. And so for that, you are definitely going to want to choose organic. The natural label is not a great choice. It doesn't really mean.
Label's a joke.
Yeah.
Label's a joke.
So it does, in the case of meat, it does mean that no added hormones have been used, but that's pretty much it. They can give them genetically modified feed. They can give them pesticides. They can give them lots of things. They just can't give them added hormones.
I just also want to say that when you're switching over to a more farm to table, simple how you're eating and what you're buying, you're not spending money on Coca-Cola or Oreos. So if it's a little bit, quote unquote, more expensive or costs more, and we've been hearing a lot about how pricing is up these days, if you're not buying packaged and, processed food, and you're buying live food, it sort of, ends up pretty close financially. Is that your experience?
Yeah, I think one of the things that happens is as people shift to real food a little bit at a time, they discover that it's not as bad as they thought it was. One, because they're not buying all the junk food and the everything else, but also, when we have real food, whole food, nourishing foods, and our cells are actually getting the nutrition and the support that they need, we also don't have as many cravings, and we can be satisfied with less. It's part of the reason we go on these hunger jags is because we're just starving. And so we're not really looking for calories. We're looking for nutrition, but we're trying to fill that need with empty calories.
And toxic calories.
Yes. And so when we can make that shift, all of a sudden you discover that maybe you don't have so many cravings. Maybe, things are better. So that's definitely a good thing. Okay. And then one more about RB. Oh, wait. Oh, sorry. That's
growth, like growth factor 1.
Yes. But it's also further increased by pasteurization.
Oh.
And RBGH also the impact is further increased by pasteurization. So we definitely want to make sure that we are avoiding these. And then RBST also causes poor health for the cows. And, I really believe if we are raising animals because we are going to either eat the product that they create, like eggs or milk or whatever, or because we're going to actually eat the animal itself, we need to be as kind as possible to that animal. That animal deserves a decent life.
I agree 100%.
Yeah. And so we want to make sure, and unfortunately RBST causes things like mastitis, reproductive disorders. And like I said, if they can't breed, they're no use to them, and other things going on. So we really want to think about that as well. Oh, sorry, that's a duplicate. Okay, so metals are another thing that are really problematic. And I'm sorry?
I bet. Really? Yeah. This is alarming. Where are metals in
so heavy metals can be found sometimes in chicken, arsenic, especially because arsenicals are used as a way to fight disease. And so you want to make sure that you are purchasing organic chicken, or that you are getting it from a farmer who is not using arsenicals in their production. And the good news is, more and more farmers markets these days, the farmers are actually coming to the market, bringing the product that they raised. And also many of them now have open farm days where you can actually go and visit the farm.
So nice. Yeah.
And see where your food is coming from, and okay, maybe it's a little hokey hay tractor ride with the kids going through the pumpkin patch or whatever, but it's a way to build that connection. We are not meant to be getting our food shipped from thousands of miles away.
Oh my goodness.
And trusting that somebody else is going to be doing what they're doing. And sometimes we don't really have an option, So for example, I live in Texas. My husband drinks coffee. Coffee does not grow here. It's going to have to come from someplace else. But I love going to the farmer's market. And I know, I was just talking with my daughter over the weekend, and they bought a half a cow from a farmer.
That's
and
great.
They got a chest freezer.
Really well. That kind of stuff freezes really well, as does organic chicken. At the market where I shop, there is a person who has meat, and there's somebody who has wild caught fish, and there's somebody who has chicken in addition, and eggs in addition to all of the vegetables. The chicken, a whole little chicken, and it's not frozen, but it's $15. And one woman said, "Oh, that's so expensive." And I said, what's expensive is eating toxic meat. I said, this is, you don't need a lot of it. It's enough for several meals, and that's delicious and not expensive. So I think we need to reevaluate how we're using our dollars towards our food budget.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think the other thing that is really interesting, a lot of people, when they look at an organic chicken for the first time, for example, or if they're starting to compare them, they're like,
right.
Yeah, they're like, it's so scrawny, it's not plumped up. Well, that's because they didn't inject it full of sodium water with all kinds of other things in there. And it actually tastes better.
It's so different.
You're getting
regular chicken, which is, and that's true. You look at the organic and you look at the regular, and the organic looks like it's a different color. It's not as fat. And you go, what's going on? And then you realize that the other chicken, as you said, has been filled with chemicals and is not healthy for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, but again, these are changes that, maybe you make them a little bit at a time, but whatever changes you're making, just be consistent about it. Once you've mastered that, then move on to the next one.
I love that. That's such a great approach.
Okay. While you're typing that up, because I love that you're putting these notes in the side. I think that's so great. Such good reminders. One of the other things we touched briefly on monosodium glutamate. Monosodium glutamate is something that's referred to as an excitotoxin. It overstimulates your brain. It's really bad for you. It can be linked to insomnia. It can be linked to headaches, allergenic symptoms, upper respiratory stuff, sinus especially. So we really want to watch out for all forms of monosodium glutamate. And, one of the challenges, and part of the reason I brought this particular slide up, is if you look at the conclusion, your body does not get used to MSG. It's not like you start.
Isn't that fascinating? Wow.
Yes. Yes, because there are some things where you can develop a tolerance. You do not develop a tolerance to monosodium glutamate. And so if you start getting headaches, or if it causes your blood pressure to spike, or if you start having, issues with sleep or whatever, it's not going to get better if you keep eating it. And it's so bad for you, like, please don't eat it anyway.
And also they put it a lot in Chinese food. So anytime not that I do this that often, I have to make sure I say to them, no MSG in my food, right?
Well, and one of the things that's so interesting, I like to go, there's an Asian market near me where they have a lot of very interesting produce. They have
Bitter
ginger
melon.
root and turmeric and tamarind and all of these things. And I love to go there and buy that. And so I always sort of take a spin through the aisles. I almost never buy anything out of the aisles except seaweed. But they sell huge bottles of MSG.
Yeah,
And I'm
I've
like,
seen them.
oh, like,
Bags.
it's crazy.
Yeah.
Don't
Yeah,
buy
they're
that.
for the Chinese restaurants.
Exactly. So flavoring, not only, I talked about the artificial flavor, we don't want anything artificial in our food. We also, as much as humanly possible, please avoid natural flavor. And I say as much as humanly possible because sometimes there are certain things that you may be doing, like if you're getting a prescription and they've put something in it and you haven't gone to a compounding pharmacy, and all of a sudden you read the ingredients and realize it says natural flavor. So we really want to watch out for it. We also want to make sure to take the time to ask, where did that flavor come from? So there's a company that has a product that I like, and I contacted them and I asked them, and they said that it was actually an extract, but they called it natural flavoring in order to comply with federal labeling guidelines. And I was like, okay, I can live with that, so it does require a little bit of detective work sometimes.
Most people are not going to call the company Mira. That's a Mira specialty. Thank you for doing that.
So this is what natural flavor means. And so I'd like to point out that some of it is essence, extractive, hydrolysate, distillate. Those mean that something has been done to take whatever it was and turn it into a flavor. And it can come from anything: spice, fruit, juice, vegetables, blah, 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 like just this whole thing. So it really is a lot. And so I want to introduce you to, and here's part of the reason with natural flavoring that I struggle with it. And I'm going to lead right up front by saying there's not a lot of this in the food supply. And I'll tell you why in a moment. But natural can truly mean anything. There is one natural ingredient that, unless you're buying liquor in Sweden, I think it's Sweden.
Well, okay.
You will not see it on the label because they won't use the word castoreum. Because if they did, they would look it up and you would find out that it belongs to my little friend Bucky. It is the anal gland secretion of beavers.
Hey, that's TMI.
I'm just saying, so castoreum gets labeled natural flavor or natural vanilla flavor because apparently it tastes like vanilla. I don't know who tasted it.
Oh, I don't know. Who found that out? I feel so sorry for the person who.
And here's the thing, I will
any day. I'm just,
absolutely. But here's the thing. So let's, I also want to step back and say, first of all, not a lot of it, because this product was essentially, the waste product of the fur industry. We're not a lot of fur, so not a lot of beavers. They do still raise some for that apparently, but again, not a lot. It is not harmful. And I understand there is actually a homeopathic remedy that uses castoreum.
Oh yeah, there's a homeopathic remedy for that. But that's
But here's the thing. What I object to is the deception of not putting it on the label, of hiding it under a term that you have no idea to know what it is. And that means anything could be suspect. So I just don't really like natural flavor.
No, I think the key. Oh, I love this. I have a version of this in my.
So just really quickly, I wanted to share that one of the things food producers do to try to get you to not purchase or to not look at the label is to use something called front of package labeling. And this
Mhm.
is where they put all of these lovely words on the front to try to convince you to buy their product. And so it's high fiber, it's low fat, it's fat free, it's sugar free, it's whatever, low sodium. And so I wanted to encourage everybody to take a screenshot of this particular slide so that you understand what these words really mean. However, having said that, you should not be eating anything that is free from an ingredient unless it's like peanut free because somebody has an allergy. Low whatever, also not good. Reduced whatever, not great. And as we've touched on before, natural means absolutely
Nothing,
nothing.
nothing,
Yes.
zero.
Now, I do want to do this quick label comparison for you. We're just going to spin through this so you can see. Some of you may already have this in your pantry, in which case you're going to understand why you want to just get rid of it. So we're starting with this product. This is the actual label off the product. And in order to make it easy, we're not going to go through all of this because we did that already. We see, it has calories, fat, cholesterol, sodium, 2 grams of carbohydrates, 1 gram of sugar,
Excuse me, that's
1.
a huge amount of sodium. Oh
It
my
is a
goodness,
huge amount of
250
sodium
milligrams of sodium. That is
for,
huge.
for 2 tablespoons. This is a product where a serving size is only about 2 tablespoons. So then we turn it into a light version. So now it's light. And one of the biggest changes that happens is water becomes the number one ingredient. So all of a sudden you're paying a lot of money for water because this panel includes things by volume. The more of something there is, the higher up on the list it is, the lower on the list.
Yeah, by
Yes,
volume. Yeah.
absolutely. We're also including maltodextrin, which you may not realize is made from corn malt, malto corn, and it's a type of sweetener. All of a sudden, we have less calories, less fat. We have less cholesterol. The sodium remains the same, but we now also have more carbs, more sugar. So big change. Here comes the fat-free version. Look at all of the ingredients that we added in. A lot of these we didn't even really talk about in this
Corn
particular
syrup. We didn't
presentation
talk about
today.
corn syrup.
Right. So now we've had, so it's
Rosy
water and
oil.
corn syrup. So you're paying a lot of money for corn syrup. We now have 30 calories, no fat. We also have dropped down. We now have no protein. We only had 1 gram before. The sodium has jumped. The
From
carbs have
260 to
jumped.
310. Yeah.
The sugar has jumped. So it's high in sugar, but it's fat free. And
There are a
so
lot of people who would buy this. They
I
think they have
know,
high cholesterol and they need this.
I
And that's
know.
the
And so
problem.
it's really, really challenging. So here we
Very
go,
sad.
folks. Ta-da! Hidden Valley Ranch.
Okay, make your own.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh,
Ranch
you're
dressing.
spending so much money. This is where when somebody says it's too expensive to buy organic, this probably, how much does this cost? $10, $9?
I don't
And
know.
you can make your own with real mayonnaise and lemon juice and apple cider vinegar and herbs, and it's has none of that, and it's a real food and it's delicious.
And the thing is, there are so many salad dressings and other condiments like that that you can make for yourself. You do not need to buy them all the time. And a lot of times it can actually be less expensive to make it yourself
It is.
because you're just using a few simple ingredients. I mean, if you're making some kind of a, fancy, I don't know, tarragon white wine vinegar with truffle oil, something, yeah, that could add up. But most of us don't do that on a regular
No,
basis.
that's a holiday moment.
Right. And so we really want to make sure that we are taking the time to pay attention to what is in what we are eating and what is in the things that we're using to stock our pantry.
I don't have one bottle of over-the-counter salad dressing in my house or my refrigerator. Zero. I wouldn't even consider spending money on it. Just I make my own.
And the other thing is, the nice thing is when you make your own, you can actually make one, finish that, or have a little bit left and make another one
Yeah.
instead of having 5 different bottles hogging up space in your refrigerator.
That you spent money on and you've just shown are really filled with toxic ingredients.
Yes,
And you think you're eating
absolutely.
healthy because you're eating salad, and then you put this junk on it, so you're counteracting everything. Yeah.
Right, right, absolutely. So that is our stuff for today. I'm actually, there you go. We removed that from the stream. Thank you, Carol. And so we really, I think the biggest thing that I can encourage you to do, start reading the labels, start paying attention to what's in what you're eating and the changes that the manufacturers make to your food so that you're not purchasing things that are not healthy choices for you.
And people can find you at theingredientguru.com. Is that true?
Yes. Theingredientguru.com is my website. I have a great free newsletter where I talk about all the stupid stuff they do
I
to
know,
our
I
food
get your newsletter.
and some of the food wins. Like, companies are starting to change because people like you are paying attention and you are voting with your wallet, and they are making changes. So we
And
need more
people
of
like
that.
you are calling them up and sending them emails. You're doing that for us. That's really getting them where it counts, Mira. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And then
Uh,
I'm also on Instagram.
oh,
So you can
what's your
see
Instagram handle? I'm
The Ingredient Guru. So at The Ingredient Guru.
going to put that up next. So, Mira, thank you so much. This was, first of all, this was a really great presentation, a great slide
Thank
deck filled
you.
with really important information for the community of women who are really empowered about their health, about what they're buying, about what they're spending money on, about the health for themselves and their families, and it has the ripple effect.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because if you're doing it not only for yourself, but for your family, you are teaching them how to do it for themselves and take that further out into the world, which is a truly wonderful
It
thing.
is. I'm going to give you an example. You know, we make salad dressing every day when we have our salad. And I taught my daughter as she was little. She started helping me. And now she's 27, off to college. And she said every time she goes to a party, everybody says, well, you just bring the salad because we love your salad dressing. And her roommates, oh, we're having salad for dinner. Will you make the salad dressing? And she said, Mom, what's the matter with these people? It takes 2 seconds. You put some olive oil and everything else in a jar. You shake it up. You have delicious salad dressing. And I also taught her how to, change the type of vinegar. You change it to different vinegar. You add in some soy sauce. You got an Asian style dressing. So a little bit of spice shifting makes a really big difference. You add a little bit of mayonnaise with some herbs. You got, a green goddess dressing. I mean, it's just,
Absolutely.
I love green goddess dressing. I don't eat it very often.
Yeah.
Um,
No, absolutely.
yeah, there's certain things that we just love, and that then becomes healthy and not this. That was really interesting. The normal, the fat free, it's just amazing what you went through. Alarming, absolutely. People,
Well, and again, this is because people don't really realize everything that they're doing until they actually take the time to look at the label.
that's the
So,
message.
and I do want to share, if you're interested, I'm happy to send you the link to it. But I happen to have a very simple, very easy, make your own green goddess salad dressing
Oh,
because I
please
do love that dressing. So yes, I
send it
will
to
send
me.
it.
Mira's some of Mira's recipes are in my cookbook. So, and
Yeah,
she's given credit for that. But Mira, send me the green goddess dressing and I'll send it out to you.
absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
we're gonna send you an email, everyone, and I'll post it here. I'll have my Canva person make a post out of it and say Mira Dessy's green goddess dressing, so you'll all have it. Okay.
That
So
sounds great.
wonderful, Mira. Thank you so much. Really
Thank
wonderful to hang out with
you.
you as always, ladies. It's been we're here for almost an hour. Great presentation. Please look at the slide deck and really begin to, as Mira said, undertake one thing, make the change in a slow way and be consistent with it, and then go on to the next item that you want to remove and replace.
Yeah.
That's empowerment. Okay.
Absolutely. Well, have a wonderful day. Thank
Have a
you so
wonderful
much for
day.
having me on.
Thank you. This is Carol Lourie signing off for now. There'll be more later. Have a lovely day, everyone.